China.
China.
China. China.
China.
China.
China.
China.
China.
What up, y'all? This is Attorney Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. I want to have a discussion today. I'm going to have a discussion about China, the tariffs. Trump took it down from 145 to 30 with China. We still have the auto tariffs. We still have the steel tariffs. We still have Canada and Mexico. And 30% is not at all it. You know, we'll talk about it in a second. We're going to talk about de minimis and how there was a loophole that Temu and Shein were using, the de minimis loophole, and we'll talk about that. But the base thing I want to talk about in this show is how a lot of people are missing it. Tariffs are largely needed when you talk about something like China because they don't follow labor rights. Let's talk about it. So we're going to get right into the discussion. And in this discussion, we're going to talk about the question, are U.S. small businesses KNICK middlemen for China's bad business practices? So people are buying in China to avoid all of the gains of labor rights, emission rights that happened post-New Deal in America. So those businesses that use that, which is almost all the businesses, why should we feel bad for you? This is the quintessential question that's being missed here. Whether you're getting the de minimis loophole we'll talk about in a second and basically trying to avoid tariffs altogether, or whether you feel like it's okay to manufacture where they don't have labor rights so you don't have to pay labor here. And I just want to have this discussion today because I think for a lot of people that larger view has gotten lost and we're just looking at it in terms of nations. I want to talk today because we got a generation of people under the age of 50 that don't know nothing about good living. And they don't know about making anything. Not making a table, a chair, a couch, a piece of clothes, nor seeing anyone make any of it. And so now they want to say that, you know, I want a black business. Then you open the black business and there ain't nothing but Chinese products inside. So if you got a black business that black people didn't make nothing that goes inside, I'm talking about ADOS, American descendants say we black people in America, what's the point? Let's get to it.
Shelves of oils at beauty supply store Pink Noir are miles away from President Donald Trump's tariffs overseas. In Memphis, Tennessee, owner Chastity Monroe says price hikes will soon hit close to home.
There are so many different products in this store. Yes. Where do you get most of them from? Are they manufactured in the United States?
No. So I like to say the entire store really exists in the international trade, right? About 90% of the items are sourced from China.
Pause for a second. So what she just told us is that 90% of her store sits on top of a shirking of labor rights, emission standards, and the like. And I don't even know if she understood that. So now we're going to get into this discussion where many people that are in business in America don't know nothing about business. They just know about being the middleman for knickknacks that come out of China, that avoid FDA standards, emission standards, labor rights. And then they come here and want us to feel for them on the basis of community. Okay. So we're going to get right to it. We're going to get into this discussion. I saw this woman making silicone baby spoons. She just makes silicone baby spoons and stuff. She built her whole idea of work on selling us silicone baby spoons. In the chat, when you see people say they make silicone baby spoons, I kind of think that they're going to mix up the silicone. You think this woman here is mixing silicone? I want to get into the discussion. U.S. and China agree to slash reciprocal tariffs in major step toward easing trade war. The world's two biggest economies agreed to a 90-day pause on most of their levies. So there was an agreement for a pause. And that pause isn't a true pause because we're going from 145% tariffs to 30% tariffs. For everyone that's listening right now, what I will tell you is prepare yourself for price hikes. Prepare yourself for possible products leaving shelves. Prepare yourself for store closures because 30% price hikes is still the profit margin that many of these stores would actually receive. Maybe it might help big businesses. They'll just increase the prices, offset But for all of your small businesses, you know, it's coming. And I believe that they, you know, I don't believe necessarily that Trump's way of instituting it has been well thought out, but I don't know how you would think this out. Because what's happened is China is a way to have a secondary version of the same gig economy. It's a way to have your cake and eat it too, to claim that you support American business, American labor, emission standards, and then buy all of what you need from people who don't give none of that back to the world. Okay. Breaking, U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says the U.S. can always go back to April 2nd levels for tariffs on China. Bessent says it is implausible for tariffs on China to go below 10%. He also says current tariff levels are the floor and April 2nd levels are the ceiling. Okay. Current tariff levels are the floor. Well, the current tariff level is 30%. And the prior tariff level was 145%. So to me, all of that means you better prepare for a different world. And I don't know if I can convince you of that until it actually happens, but don't be the person that's short on stuff. Again, I say to you, the question, are U.S. small businesses KNICK middlemen for China's bad business practices? Let me explain to you what I mean. There are going to be some clips in here. Many of them might run a little long, but I want you to take those clips and listen because they're going to give context to the show. This one's about 8 minutes.
In this tiny warehouse in Northern California, Dusty Kenny is getting her products ready to sell on Amazon.
We make baby spoons, baby placemats, bento boxes, bowls, plates, cups, and we manufacture them in China, and they come via.
She said that she done built a life on making baby products. When you hear the price points, like she was charging $9 for a baby spoon. I'm going to show you in a second on a catalog how much you can buy that baby spoon in bulk on the Chinese website. I believe it's like 80 cents, 90 cents. I'm not here to knock anyone's business, but what I'm seeing here is people are not understanding that when she says she's manufacturing in China, whether she understands it or not, I don't want to hear that it's too cost prohibitive to do the same product in America. What you're trying to do, what you are doing, is avoiding the emission standards, the labor rights, the FDA standards that we have here in America. You then, you'll see in the video, would like to claim on IP standards we have here. You didn't pay for that. You manufactured there, so when they take your spoon and redesign it, that's what the risk was. You got in the hustle and got hustled. Let's talk.
See in all these boxes here.
But now Kenny is facing a giant additional cost, a 125% tariff on all her goods coming from China.
We have tens of thousands of products here in this warehouse. And when you add a tariff to all of that, and you're trying to absorb that for your customer to not raise prices on them, that adds up to an astronomical amount.
On April 2nd, Trump announced big, aggressive tariffs, a 10% baseline on nearly all imports to the U.S., and far steeper rates on many nations.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them.
This is my livelihood. This is how we put food on the table. It could put me out of business.
Stocks tumbled amid fears of.
So now, just like I asked last week with the Chinese grocers in the Mississippi Delta, what I pose for you to think about in your head as you listen to the rest of this show, what I pose for you to think about, let me put myself bigger, is she in the baby spoon business or in the Chinese governmental business of avoiding labor rights, emission standards, FDA standards? I would argue she's in the latter business and does not know it, because if she wasn't, she would be able to do that same spoon here and make a profit that she can make a living. But if you can't do it here, that means that your business really shouldn't exist, in my view. That is the quintessential issue with both her and the beauty salon owner. We have gotten to a point where people are trying to tell us they're in a business when actually they're middlemen for knickknacks. Let's get back to it.
reciprocal tariffs, rising prices, and slowing consumer spend. Although Trump did put a 90-day pause on tariffs for some countries on April 9th,
prices will go up in the short term. There's no doubt about it.
CNBC sat down with 8 U.S. businesses who sell on Amazon to find out how the new tariffs are having an impact on their prices, their competitors in China, and their customers' willingness to spend. Tariffs have been around since America's early days. But since the creation of the federal income tax in 1913, they've become a smaller and smaller portion of federal revenue, with some notable moments of tariff increases along the way. By the 2010s, the average tariff was just 1% to 3%. Then Trump sent tariffs soaring during his first term, taxing steel and aluminum from U.S. allies, threatening tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and launching a trade war with China. Sound familiar?
Brands come to us panicked about tariffs. We started talking to our clients about recommending getting out of China a long time ago when the first rounds of tariffs came up. And then Biden became president. We said, Biden's not going to remove it.
Sure enough, most of Trump's first-term tariffs continued under Biden. And now Trump's back. He started with a 10% tariff on most Chinese goods in February. China retaliated with an added 15% tariff on some U.S. imports. Trump raised the China tariff to 20% on March 4th. That's also when whopping new 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada went into effect.
I was in a state of shock, and it was very sudden. We have to stop everything. We cannot afford selling goods anymore.
Portable Winch Co. has been making its car winches in Canada for more than 20 years. Although most products on Amazon are sold by third parties, tariffs will also impact its own brands like Amazon Basics.
They're trying to win by saying we have a similar feature set to the national battery at a lower price. And so if they have to raise that price, consumers are likely to have a preference for that well-known, familiar brand.
So will Amazon increase prices on its own brands, passing the new tariff cost on to consumers?
The last thing they want to do is right away just pass it to the consumer because you don't know how transitory this is. I think if it extends after, call it 6 months, then a lot of those ultimately get passed to the consumer.
As for whether third-party sellers will need to raise prices,
I will hold my prices for as long as I can and just absorb those tariffs.
Did you notice what the journalist called her? A third-party seller. What American people that believe they're in business are is the middlemen for avoiding the labor rights that came post-New Deal, and they now don't grasp what real business is. And I'm not saying that there isn't a whole set of policies that has undercut us having the factories here. What I'm dealing with is I don't feel nothing for you. Like in the end, what is happening now is you have a black population that doesn't understand, when we focus on ADOS, that they're American descendants of slavery. Black is a color. I don't care what nobody else tell you. It's before the 80s, it was just ADOS. So we didn't have to say ADOS. But in addition, then you create an idea of your business having a specialness because it's owned by you as an ADOS person. But everything in it not only isn't created by you. That's number one. I mean, I say created. I mean, many times people are not even doing the mold. Let me explain. They're not even doing the mold, meaning they are not doing the actual mold of what the product is gonna look like. And some people, few people are. They go to this website. And on this website, made in China, they go to one of these items. And then they pick the item. And then they bring the item over here for 90 cents a piece. And they mark it up to $9. So we got a person that's selling us a product that was 90 cents that they didn't create under the auspices that it's black owned, that they got made in China. But in addition, what allowed for it to be made in China was the circumvention of the labor rights that we as a nation fought for and got after the New Deal, and the circumvention of the emission standards that will protect the skies, the water for your children. And we supposed to be looking out for your black business. Okay. You can see the spoons right here. Baby food spoons. They 63 cents a piece. You can pick them. They got a store, a big store where Shein, Temu, it's like a super shopping mall in China. They all get their stuff right from there. I might cut that in the final version.
This is the Yiwu International Trade Market in China. With 75,000 stores spread out over 1,500 acres, it's the world's largest wholesale market. If you've ever bought anything on Temu or Shein, there's a good chance it came from here. But the price of all these goods might be going up after President Trump suspended a trade exemption that had turbocharged Chinese e-commerce platforms. A little-known loophole had fueled a boom in low-cost Chinese goods making their way from Yiwu to the US. You can get bunting for your US election campaign. But Trump's new tariffs may put an end to that. Here's why this market, the center point of global wholesale trade, has found itself in the US government's crosshairs.
But I'm saying to you today, we're 310-388-3499. I want to hear from you, hear your opinion. Please support the channel, tonetalks.net, to subscribe, donate, or share. Please support the channel, support this discussion. I don't believe, in my view, that she's the kind of business person that she's presenting herself as. To me, she's being presented as a manufacturer, when in actuality, she's a KNICK middleman. That's just my view. U.S. and China agree to slash reciprocal tariffs.
I'm already competing against those Chinese sellers that are undercutting me.
On Amazon, yeah, we'll probably increase the price by, 10 to 20% at some point.
Tariffs are going to increase the price of toys for the consumer. There's no doubt about it.
While tariffs on China are nothing new, it's unusual for them to hit certain types of goods, like toys.
I mean, it's real steel. This is a real steel, really tangible toy. This toy retails for $29.99. This will end up costing $5 to $10 more as these tariffs fully pass through.
Jay Foreman runs Florida. Say it's financially allow them to avoid tariffs.
I think the administration would like people to think that this is a China problem and that this is only hurting Chinese-based businesses and helping U.S.-based businesses. But I am a U.S.-based business, let's be clear. I can't manufacture everything here. I wish.
She sees herself as a U.S.-based business. She is manufacturing her product entirely in China to avoid the labor rights in U.S. Now, she might not understand that's what she's doing, but it's built to her price point. But she still sees herself and sells this product at that premium on the base that we should support her because she's U.S. based.
That I could, but everything else is done here. Everything's warehoused here, designed here, photographed here. All the income that comes from that stays here.
All those costs of doing business in the U.S. add up quickly.
And those costs are different than they are, say, in China. And so when you have the factory directly knocking off a product and sending it right to Amazon and not paying tariffs, we can't compete.
Like so many others, Kenny needs to keep prices low to stay competitive in the era of Temu and Shein.
My most popular product are my silicone baby spoons, and I used to sell them for $9.99. And now I sell them for $7.99 because so many knockoffs have come in and sell them for even $5.50. I've seen them on sites like Temu for even $3 or $4.
Until now.
I don't understand what she's saying. Can somebody in the chat or on the call, you can call in, explain to me what she thinks she should have? You went into a place that does not recognize American intellectual property rights. You did not pay for that. You said you didn't want to pay for that when you bought all of your goods in China. She's trying to play both sides of the fence and play victim. And then in addition, she's doing it in her case, but reflecting this white privilege that's happened because white people have so much money, they don't know where to spend it.
Absurdly low prices on sites like Temu, Alibaba, and Shein were possible largely because of a loophole called de minimis that allows orders under $800 to skirt by without paying duties and taxes. Chinese sellers send individual or small orders directly to U.S. customers to keep shipments under the limit. But sellers like Kenny want to quality check their goods, not send them straight from the factory in China.
We bring them in large quantities in pallet.
Worried about how it would
in China. And
former Marine Corps pilot and combat veteran Barton O'Brien.
This is a whole nother white person, and he's selling dog suits.
First heard President Trump's promise on the campaign trail to tariff imported goods. He worried about how it would impact his own thriving specialty pet gear business.
I did an analysis and realized that would pretty much put us out of business.
O'Brien is the founder of Bay Dog in Maryland, whose signature products, dog harnesses and life jackets, are made overseas, which would mean Trump's tariffs raise the cost of all his products. So O'Brien figured he would get ahead of it just in case.
We borrowed as much money as we could. We accelerated all of our production runs, and we brought as much inventory.
Let me show y'all something. Let me show y'all something. We got the same problem with him as we had with her. This right here. You can go right on this website and get the dog suits for $2.95 a dog suit. $2.95 a dog suit. Why we need to buy your $12? But you gonna get them lower than $2.95 because you're gonna buy them in bulk. And then you're going to tell us you're the dog suit maker. And then you don't understand that you getting them at that price point because they don't have no labor rights. Made in China. Now, I'm not saying either of them went to this website. They might have even had a design that they drew up in the rare case. But many times that people that are these small business are just going to a website and they're just resellers with a logo that get added on. Environmental emissions. China is a major emitter. China is the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Why does China have no labor laws? The reason for which the labor standards in China are not enforced is due to the lack of incentive for any local or national official to do so. Many of these officials' performance evaluations are primarily focused on economic growth. We can't compete. We got labor unions. We got rest break standards. Rest break meaning meal break, rest break. We got standards for how clean the restroom has to be at the workplace. We can't compete if people are sourcing their materials or their product from a place that don't meet none of those standards. We got emission standards that what can come out of the stack house or the smokehouse out of the top of the factory. I just want to talk. And then we want to cry when the people have to deal with the consequence of shopping on this website or shopping on somebody who helps this website exist. Viewpoint, why is China cheaper? So it's not just labor, but labor is at the base in my view. It's governmental standards. So you sign up for, let's play this clip one more time. You sign up for missing the governmental standards when you do this.
The entire store really exists in the international trade, right? Yeah. About 90% of the items are sourced from China.
You're not
in China specifically.
Trade.
Yes.
When President Trump
I'm gonna let this play. She's not in the international trade. She a middleman for KNICK from China.
Imposed a 145% tariff on imports from China. Monroe says her vendors hiked prices, and the increase will soon hit her store shelves.
I normally have a short afro. Yeah. Right now, I've got about 4 packs in for my braids. Yeah. How much would that cost with tariffs?
Yeah, so, just like a pack of hair like this, that would be $6.99. So this could very well be double the price.
So a lot of these increases are ultimately, it sounds like, going to the consumer.
Absolutely.
In the United States, black hair care is estimated to be a $2.5 billion industry, and loyal customers are...
Let me explain to you guys why this is an important show. What I'm doing now is having you really understand what does it mean to own a business? What am I saying when I say there should be more black businesses? Are you saying that these people should be the Diddy for China, like Diddy was for Ciroc, basically glorified marketing folk? Or and I say that in the sense of, do they buy the product and own the product? They probably go one more step than Diddy did, but they are not making it. They are not producers of anything. They are middlemen for knickknacks. Knickknacks we don't need.
Bracing for impact.
I know they talk about everything else
But I want to know about the hair products.
This is important for Black women, especially our beauty, our hair. Sometimes we may not even be able to get a job if we don't look a certain way.
Foreign suppliers are critical to small businesses like Monroe.
So now we move to the second part. Her product then becomes identity, not a product. You cannot build a community on selling identity. Then when I ask you to stand on identity and make sure that there are labor rights behind your product, you say, well, I got to get a cheap price. Come on.
Some vendors encouraging buyers to take advantage of the now 90-day pause on tariffs for other countries, like Cambodia, where Butter Baby Hair Imports owner Shadara McGilberry sources her products.
We're not passing that on to the customers at the moment.
Do you expect that to change?
Most definitely. It's definitely going to have to change. If it doesn't change, we'll end up going out of business.
Economist Trevon Logan says many Black-owned mom-and-pop shops aren't in a position to adjust to a global trade war.
The smallest fish in the largest possible pond does not have that sort of negotiating power. The second problem is you think one of the things that you would do is buying a lot of things now before the tariffs hit. But if you're a small business, you don't have a lot of space to stock all of that inventory.
We've heard from the Trump administration.
Somebody said this is deep. Well, what makes this deep is we going beyond the shallow. The shallow is in this video. The deeper pond is to ask the question, why do they need to go to China? And it's stopping at just because we don't have the factories here is not enough. It's to ask, why does China have the factories? Well, in addition to the levels I just gave you, I discussed it, check the last show out. China is subsidizing their factories. So we don't even have subsidies that allow for Black folk, for American folk, but Black folk, ADOS Black folk, to create producing manufacturing factories. So then all we become is the marketing campaign people for our own destruction economically.
Administration that the end goal is to, in part, bring manufacturing back to the U.S. You've said that because of some of the pricing, you might bring these products, the manufacturing, to the country. So is it working?
I think it is working, but it's not working. So it becomes unaffordable.
At Pink Noir,
which means you can't be in business if you got to actually meet all of the standards.
Monroe also sells her own hair care line. Since the tariffs, she's explored making the products here in the United States.
The minimum order quantities are astronomical for a small business.
And I've been struck that throughout this conversation, often you've had a bit of a smile.
But ask her if she's part of the ADOS Foundation, if she donates, because what has happened is the reason it's astronomical, and this is the emptiness of her business, in my view. Take it how you want to. Is because she doesn't have the subsidies and the support from the government to have manufacturing facilities. So I don't need the last step. I need all the steps in making a business. I don't need facing. I don't need identity. I don't need you to sell it to me on the idea that somebody can't get a job because they ain't got a perm. What I need for you to understand is once you do that business in China, you're not a Black business no more. Talk about it. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
What's up, Big Tone?
What's up? Give me your take.
Okay, hey Tone, I'll be real quick. It's a deep thought. I have two questions for you. I want to get your perspective on it. First question is more like a rhetorical question, what you just said, Tone. I don't feel any loyalty to buy from those two people you just had on there. So I got some critical questions for them. Are they for ADOS reparations? What are they doing? So I don't have any loyalty to those individuals, and I don't feel per se bad for them. Now, here's my other question, Tone, for us. I teach at a community college, Tone, and my question to you, where should we be, or what should I be doing to direct the students on the skills and the things that they need to kind of go to for, with the tariffs and all of the things that's going on? Because, Tone, one of the things that I come across is that mostly the students, they are like saturated in this kind of, I have a business. And then I'll ask them, Tone, okay, what is your business? Those things, I want to be supportive of it, Tone. And they'll say, well, I make your t-shirts, or I have an icy type of business where I'm selling icy. So, Tone, my question to you is, where should we be directing the students, or what kind of advice should I be giving the students of the fields and the things that they need to prepare for?
Let me say this. Right now, we're in an information moment because there's so much transition going on. Trump levied 145% tariffs, making sure everybody understands what that's supposed to do is two-part. It's supposed to punish the Chinese market, but it's supposed to incentivize businesses here, large businesses, not her beauty supply store, to manufacture here. The problem happens when Trump doesn't stick to it, because what happens is that if I'm a large business owner, if I'm Microsoft, why would I build? If I'm Tesla, why would I build my factory here once you're going to change the tariffs back to 30% in 6 weeks? I won't. And what I'm saying is it makes it hard to tell students where to take their skills and learn skills because we don't know where this market is going right now. You add in AI, meaning artificial intelligence, you add in gigification of work that came under Obama first. And what we have is a melting pot where we got a first step. It's like baby steps first. Understand what makes a business. Understand what we're saying when we're saying we want to cycle black dollars. Understand what we're saying when we say black. Are we saying ADOS? Or are you saying flat black, everybody in the world? And if you have that understanding, you can then ask, do the Haitians or the Jamaicans or the Nigerians follow the same premise? Not only in America, but there. And if they don't, why are you coming up with it? Do they look around and say in Nigeria, cycle the black dollar? They don't. No, they don't say that there. And also, what does it mean to spend the black dollar if everything in the store, 90% come from China? So I'm just saying right now, I think we're in an informative space and time where people are not understanding these connections, and they look at this basic MSNBC video and don't walk away with an understanding that she's really a front man for Chinese business. Go ahead.
Okay. No, well, Tone, I'm going to get off so someone else can. But Tone, I appreciate what you're doing, brother, because that just gave me some great tools to use. Mainly, showing your videos in class, having a conversation with them, and seeing them connect the dots. Because you're right, Tone. They're doing things, but they don't know how all these things connect.
Let me say one more thing before you go. Let me say one more thing before you go.
Okay.
As a collector, an organizer of people, one of the things me and Yvette are running into is because ain't nobody built nothing, I can't help you build yourself. So we got a society now of a full generation of people that ain't never built nothing in their life. And then we want to take them and then tell them that they should be part of community when their idea of business is basically selling out. It's not selling out in that old school sense of selling out to the white master, quote unquote, but it's selling out to their own positioning as producers rather than consumers because they were born into a post-Reagan America. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, Colin.
All right. Thank you, John. Keep up a good one.
We getting into it. Let me read a little something. I'm come right to you. 443. We got a chat filling up. 310-388-3499. Please support this channel. I want to have this discussion because we got a lot of half steps in the discussion around this whole thing, and people are not understanding not only de minimis, where the whole goal is to shirk even the tariffs that are in place with this under $800 shipping advantage that's given. But in addition, the whole thing is to avoid the labor rights and the emission rights and the governmental regulations that are in America, and then to cry wolf when they take your IP, your intellectual property. There are wages. Look, viewpoint, why is China cheaper? Cheaper prices are due to a complex national strategy of China to become the preeminent superpower of the 21st century. There are wages for the workers directly involved in producing the parts. Labor is abundant and cheap in China because even though 300,000 have risen into the middle class and above, this still leaves 1 billion people living at the poverty level. So when you want the cheap Chinese price as a producer, as a seller or middleman, you want to take part in this oppression. At any one time, there are an estimated 100 million workers who are unemployed and underemployed, which about equal the number of Americans employed in full-time jobs. All employees in China have the right under law to join the ACFTU, which claims some 170 million members and is controlled by the Communist Party. So their union is a super union controlled by the government, basically. Unionizing in China and the creation of competing unions is illegal. Party leaders have ensured that the ACFTU has a monopolist position. They don't want autonomous unions springing up. So when I play, and I'm gonna finish that. When I play this,
when we talked about,
I like to say the entire store really exists in the international trade, right? About 90% of the items are sourced from China.
okay, when I play this, she is benefiting and trying to take part in this oppression. That's not what this ADOS Black political journey is supposed to be about. And it's not for you to take that because you don't have nothing else in the form of business and understand that as business. However, there are 1,000 protest demonstrations occurring every week in China, even at the risk of beatings, demotions, dismissals, and even torture. As a result, wages have finally been rising by about 15% over year. It took suicides by workers in the summer of 2010 to achieve additional improvement in wages and working conditions at plants that were more like prison camps with dormitories for workers to live on site and fences around the building so workers couldn't leave the premises. Third, there are the costs of compliance to health and safety regulation and environmental regulations. These costs are less expensive in China than in the United States because the Chinese government imposes few health and safety or environmental regulations. How many people got kids in the chat? How many people have kids in the chat? So you want your hair done so bad that you're willing to take part in a world that's destroying the ozone layer for your babies. Now, I'm not saying that you specifically spent $1 and said destroy the ozone. But what I'm saying is that in America, we had a movement of policy. We are fighting against deregulation by Trump. We are saying all the things right here. You can't then say it wrong in your products. China doesn't provide workmen's compensation insurance for their workers, so workers hurt on the job don't receive any compensation when they are injured to the point that they are disabled. Although China has its own environmental protection agency, the environmental protection laws are generally ignored and not enforced, especially at the local level. So that's what...
Yes. I like to say the entire store really exists in the international trade, right? About 90% of the items are sourced from China.
From China specifically?
Yes.
When President Trump imposed a 145% tariff on imports from China, Monroe says her vendors hiked prices, and the increase will soon hit her store shelves.
I normally have a short afro right now.
I don't want to hear about your short afro. I want you to do journalism. This is not journalism. Doing a marketing commercial for this young woman is not journalism. What I want you to do is the harder conversation about what the tariff is supposed to do. It's supposed to create a punishment where, in effect, you stop taking part in businesses that are detrimental to the entire community. Talk about it. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from? 443?
How you doing, Tom? This is Trayvon from Baltimore.
Give me your take on it.
Man, I told you a couple of weeks ago that we're the front lines. We're the first infantrymen in this trade war. And everyone's just starting to understand what that really means. And I just, I just wonder how it's all going to stack up in the next couple of weeks because ain't no ships in the dock. That means everybody got on hand what they got, and that's going to take 7 to 8 weeks at least for the next shipment to come in. So what's it going to look like in 7 to 8 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think that the 30% is going to make it so big businesses can actually increase the price and y'all won't notice. I recommend on Amazon, use the site camel.com. How many people in the chat have heard of camel.com? So you can track the price increases on certain products. Many of the big businesses probably going to try to eat some of that 30, but not all of it. We might have shortages. It's less likely with 30 over 145, but 30% is a serious tariff. In addition, you're going to see a lot of these smaller businesses struggle, and I just don't want to hear nothing. You chose to do business with a place that undermines American business and then sell yourself as an American business. I just want to talk. Any last thing you want to say to the audience?
I just want to say that I think it's kind of ironic, given how China is positioned, especially within our propaganda system, as a purely communistic country, but they do capitalism way better than we do. And if you truly understand how capitalism works, it's not about until there's enough. It's about maximizing profit.
All right, man.
What does that look like in a world where we have stagnant wages and then but the prices keep on increasing? So we're going to continue to take a haircut, but no one's talking the real talk and saying, well, how come we have to always take a haircut? How about you take a haircut and we just redistribute?
Well, what they did now, let me make sure that everybody's clear on what the premise of this show is, to let you know what a haircut looked like. So what they did, it used to be in these closed markets, let's say that they just created something where they just paid you less. You see that they paid you less, so then you riot or you protest. Let's just say that, whether it's violent or non-violent. Well, if they make it a gig job, they can take more from you, your labor rights, your ability to have consistent wages, your ability to have time off, but they did it in a way where you don't understand that they're paying you less. Well, if they make all of the stuff in China, all those people are able to undercut your ability to have a job, so they just get rid of the job altogether. But they making the stuff from people in another place that don't have no standards. We're not even dealing with the environmental part that we all got to live in the world with the ozone. I just want to have a discussion. I want you to watch some of this that I'm just about to play. I'm going to let you go because I'm going to play about 4 to 5 minutes of this.
China.
2,000 years ago, China built its Great Wall. Today, the U.S. is building its own wall against China, not with stones and bricks, but through customs tariffs.
We will build a Great Wall.
Two colossal powers on the two ends of the Pacific, the Far East and the Far West.
Not only our problems, but world problems.
The future of the global economy may well be shaped by the tense competition between these two giants.
Don't let some of these politicians go around saying, because I'm telling you, these countries are calling us kissing my. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything, sir. The happiest people in the world would be China. They wouldn't be paying 104%. I tell you, they'd be paying no percent. We'd be paying them 104%.
In April, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed tariffs of up to 104% on all products imported from China. Beijing did not leave this move unanswered, however.
仍在对中国滥施关税，一味地进行极限施压，对这种霸道霸凌行径，中方坚决反对。美方如果真的想通过对话谈判解决问题，就应该拿出平等、尊重、互惠的态度。如果美方置两国和国际社会的利益不顾，执意打关税战、贸易战。
Just a few hours after the Foreign Ministry's statement, China announced it would impose 84% tariffs on U.S. goods and restrict exports of certain strategic products. This showdown, which will affect the entire global economic order, may have happened in a single day, but it has been an evolving process that has been ongoing for nearly 40 years. U.S. This resulted in a trade deficit for the U.S. and a surplus for China. After joining the World Trade Organization in 2001, China's export numbers skyrocketed, growing from $266 billion in 2001 to $1.4 trillion by 2008. China was saving, while the U.S. was consuming. The term Kamerica, a combination of China and America, and the metaphor of Siamese twins, were used to describe the mutual dependency of both countries in trade. During the 2008 global financial crisis, while the U.S.'s economy shrank by nearly 2%, China's grew by 9.8%. China's success was not achieved through liberal market economics, but through long-term state-controlled economic planning, exchange rate policies that supported exports, subsidies, loans, grants, infrastructure investments, and state capitalism that controlled production costs.
If you're the American president,
you have to pay a lot of attention to that because your job is to create a lot of jobs in American society. And if you don't have Chinese consumers being engaged in buying American products and Chinese investors can't invest in the United States and create more American jobs, then you'd be in trouble.
Let me say this. Somebody said, what about those South Africans? You know, everybody gonna have their topics on what to discuss. That's like tens of people. This is the major instrument of labor, of commerce in your lifetime. You can't discuss everything at the same level. You can't get fatigued because we've been talking about this, because we haven't even talked about this a lot on this show or even in Black America. This is your life played out. This is the topic. No matter if you understand it or not, you better start understanding because we still got this.
About 4 packs in for my braids.
Yeah.
How much would that cost with tariffs?
Yeah, so, just like a pack of hair like this, that would be $6.99. So this could very well be double the price.
So a lot of these increases are ultimately, it sounds like, going to the consumer.
Absolutely.
In the United States, black hair care is estimated to be a $2.5 billion industry, and loyal customers are bracing for impact.
I know they talk about everything else, but I want to know about the hair products.
This is important for Black women, especially our beauty, our hair. Sometimes we may not even be able to get a job if we don't look a certain way.
Foreign suppliers are critical to small businesses like Monroe's.
Old Dirty Kung Fu said, I'm still wondering why an integration standpoint, something over revolution. Because you just came from the grocery store. You just went to Kroger's. Look, we all live integrated. We all pay taxes, either whether you decide to properly pay your wages and taxes or you pay gas tax or you live here. The playground where you act like you don't live here and you live in the forest outside of the nation called America is a childlike view. You've already integrated from the day you were born. Now, if you want to go somewhere else, you can have that discussion somewhere else. We having a grown discussion here.
Some vendors encouraging buyers to take advantage of the now 90-day pause on tariffs for other countries, like Cambodia, where Butter Baby Hair Imports owner Shadara McGilberry sources her products.
We're not passing that on to the customers at the moment.
Do you expect that to change?
Most definitely. It's definitely going to have to change. If it doesn't change, we'll end up going out of business.
Economist Trevon Logan says many Black-owned mom-and-pop shops aren't in a position to adjust to a global trade war.
The smallest fish in the largest possible pond does not have that sort of negotiating power. The second problem is you think one of the things that
I think I know Logan. I think I do. I think he be on Twitter and sometimes be going back and forth. Somebody, Callie Nola, said this. I want to make sure everybody sees it. If we had never been able to get this stuff from China, we would be manufacturing this and owning the factory today. I don't know. I think maybe we wouldn't be having all the products. I think that maybe life would be a lot simpler, and the extension of the 60s just would, because it wasn't that long ago. It just would have been longer, and we wouldn't be having as much of this just low grade product here. And then I remember, let me tell you as an example. So me and Vet, they took us to the Dr. Cosby. We went to the Bahamas with her, and everything they were selling was from China. So what's the point of, meaning the little vendors? Everything they were selling was made in China, in Bahamas. When I went to South Africa, everything was handmade. And I'm saying this to say, I guess to make the point that, but it was weird because it's handmade. It's not as much variety. I don't know. I mean, take it for what you want.
You would do is buying a lot of things now before the tariffs hit. But if you're a small business, you don't have a lot of space to stock all of that inventory.
We've heard from the Trump administration that the end goal is to, in part, bring manufacturing back to the U.S. You've said that because of some of the pricing, you might bring these products, the manufacturing, to the country. So is it working?
I think it is working, but it's not working. So it becomes unaffordable.
At Pink Noir, Monroe also sells her own hair care line. Since the tariffs, she's explored making the products here in the United States.
The minimum order quantities are astronomical for a small business.
Yeah, because in essence, to become somebody who make this stuff with FDA standards met, with product inputs met, with environmental standards met, with labor rights met, you're supposed to be a larger scale business unless you get subsidized and do the politics so your government makes you a larger scale business. And we end up not just being knick-knack people.
And I've been struck that throughout this conversation, often you've had a bit of a smile. But when we talked about sort of the risk to your business, that smile did fade a bit. And I wonder, how has this felt for you as a small business owner?
There's absolutely fear. But I will say this, we are resilient. I come from a resilient people.
Here we go with the identity. I'm gonna go back to the show because she's not talking about she gonna make some stuff because she probably don't know how to make nothing. Not from scratch. So de minimis is the other thing that's happening, and then de minimis is $800 per day per person. They created this for tourists and for people that were traveling to send things back. They created this essentially for people, thanks for the support, to send back something smaller than $800 and also not to waste money checking every product that comes into America. But de minimis 800 refers to the U.S. de minimis threshold of $800, which is the maximum value of goods that can be imported into the U.S. by one person per day without having to pay duties or taxes and with minimal customs paperwork. Critics argue if it allows foreign companies to bypass tariffs and undercut U.S. business. Many Americans might not have felt major effects from President Donald Trump's sleeper tariffs until now. That's because a major shipping loophole exemption will go away on Friday, and that was a while back on May 2nd. The de minimis exception, as it's known, allowed shipments of goods worth $800 or less to enter into the United States duty-free. And part of the purpose of the duty was to normalize the cost of that good so that it disincentivized using people who don't have labor rights, environmental standards. It wasn't just a fee for no reason. Now with Trump, he's also trying to get access to the Chinese market because part of the reason we don't manufacture nothing is they got 1 billion people that don't buy nothing. I want to talk 310-388-3499 to talk today. I want to have the discussion. I think for a lot of people, this is a complex conversation that we are struggling with. And we better get it right. E-commerce packages left out of U.S. China tariff. So in a new deal that came about, and when I say the new deal, for those people that just came in, U.S. and China agreed to slash the reciprocal tariffs. It's still 30%. So I don't know if that's slashing. I think it will have a major impact. But in addition, it did not mention the de minimis, which I believe it shouldn't. I believe that there shouldn't be this loophole, in my view. An agreement between the United States and China to temporarily slash tariffs announced on Monday did not address what would happen to low-value de minimis e-commerce packages shipped from China to the U.S., a source briefed on the talks told Reuters. On May 2nd, the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump ended the de minimis policy, allowing packages worth less than $800 ordered online from China and Hong Kong to enter the U.S. duty-free. It imposed tariffs of 120% on such parcels. With the issue absent from Monday's announcement, trade experts said the future of the policy was now unclear. There's no clarity on de minimis at all, said Martin Palmer, co-founder of cross-border data provider Hurricane Modular Commerce. Logic said that if you cut tariffs for everything else, then it should mirror into de minimis because that's such a sizable part of the imports. And de minimis here, the cost of losing de minimis, the package costs $50 and it arrives at the house $50. What will happen under de minimis at times is you'll order the package, then when it gets to your house, it's $97. And in some cases, you don't find that out at purchase. You find that out when UPS, when FedEx brings it to you and they hit you with a bill of $47 for that $50 item. The de minimis loophole refers to a previously existing exemption that allowed certain low-value imports, especially those from China, to enter U.S. duty-free, essentially bypassing tariffs, bypassing the normalization tax that was put on these products. Because what's happening in the media is they're presenting it to the American people irresponsibly, in my view, en masse. And that irresponsibility is to say they're increasing the price of the good. What actually is happening is they're creating a normalization where the goods can compete against American goods that are made with all of the standards. Now, people can say, we don't have the factories anymore. Well, we didn't have the factories because of this lack of ability to compete with the labor advantages in Mexico or in China. and the environmental and the regulatory and subsidy advantages. I just want to make sure we have a deeper discussion today. This exemption has been largely eliminated for Chinese imports, leading to increased tariffs on these goods. The de minimis rule as it existed stated that imports valued $800 or less were generally exempt from tariffs. United States cuts tariffs on Chinese goods from 140% to 30% for 90 days. China lowers tariffs on U.S. from 125% to 10% for 90 days. 310-388-3499 if you want to speak on this or have any personal experience. I think also what happened was de minimis combined with the tax. So you had de minimis for lower businesses, and then you had people able to even buy things pre-tariff at a rate that took advantage of the Chinese subsidies and also the Chinese mistreatment of their workers. And what ended up happening is we created a world where Americans lost sight of what makes business, or at least good business. U.S.-China agreed to lower most tariffs for 90 days as trade negotiations continue. China and the U.S. have agreed to lower tariffs on goods from each other's countries for 90 days, offering a temporary reprieve in a trade war that threatens to cause a global recession, deepening a widening rift between the world's two large economies. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said Monday after weekend talks in Geneva with a Chinese delegation led by Vice Premier He Lifeng that U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods will be reduced from 145 to 30%. Beijing said it would cut its blanket tariffs on American products from 125 to 10%. This is coming from the Washington Post. Stock markets rose. Trump administration would push for China to open up more to U.S. goods. China's trade surplus with the U.S. topped $100 billion last year. Greer said the two sides had agreed on a pause to continue negotiations, which both the Chinese and the U.S. remain very committed to, but did not offer any clues as to how the underlying issues might be addressed. The agreement, although temporary, marks the first tangible move to de-escalate tensions that have been rising since Trump took office in January. Since then, Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping have engaged in a high-stakes game of chicken that has seen both sides levying higher and higher duties on the other. The U.S. has slapped a minimum tariff of 145% on Chinese goods, while Beijing raised tariffs on American products to 125%. And understand, this wasn't really about us sending product to Beijing. They haven't allowed us to sell enough products there. It was all about Chinese sending products to America and all of a sudden cutting off the spigot and also making it so they don't have anything else to do there. U.S. and China agreed to slash reciprocal tariffs in major step. But I believe 30% tariffs is still a massive problem. I think that it can lead to shortages. It definitely can lead to price hikes. And I believe for small businesses, without de minimis and with the 30%, many of you might have to go out of business. Because it just won't, you're part of the, because you don't manufacture anything. You don't make anything. So you're already the man between the man. So like what's going to end up, because you got to realize some of these big that are on this website. So let's go back. Let me say what I mean. So if you go on this website to buy some stuff and sell it to us, you are already between probably this website of one guy that actually goes out to smaller factories and gathers them together. And then, so you all the way down the food chain. So that might not be a business no more, being the middleman between the man. Somebody said, you got a white man named David Rosenberg said, you got to hand it to President Trump. Come on. I don't hand anything to him, but this is his view. He has convinced everyone that a 30% tariff on China and a 13% average tariff rate on the world, which was 2.5% in 2024, are both normal and manageable, and they aren't, in my view. Nothing like a 10% point levy on a $30 trillion beast called global trade. The problem is, I don't think that was his intent. I think he wanted much higher tariffs, as Tony is here for you, and backed down when he saw the markets react. NMR Capital said, question is, can you take a functional system, damage it artificially, then partially reverse the damage without actually doing anything? So if you are arsonist and you set a fire, and then you put the fire out with a garden hose and take 10 minutes to set the fire out, did you really help and have a better, higher functioning system after? No, you're going to end up with just a burnt up floor or wall, or maybe even the whole house burned down. You put the fire out, though. If so, then everything we know about systems, physics, and the universe is wrong. That's an extra 30% on top of the 25% in term one, and not counting the auto and steel tariff that stayed at 25%. There are two reasons that Trump caved, according to Angry Stafford on Twitter or X, on China tariffs. They weren't working, number one. China anticipated this, increased trading with other countries, more than offsetting what it lost to the U.S. That's not what happened. A lot of people in China actually were struggling as well. We just were going to feel it. We're still going to feel the impact, because even with this shift, there's no shifts. So you're going to, in the short term, definitely start to see an impact as stores, especially stores that didn't stock up. Many of those smaller shops, like that beauty supply shop, they in trouble, period. It was no longer the global economy he was holding hostage. It was just ours. What I ask you guys as small business owners, whether you're a hairstylist or something else, you're going to have to really be careful about raising prices on an indigent group, on a group that already is struggling, as you try to offset the increase in different hair care products, things of the like. You better start thinking about it. So if the price of the hair weave or what they call it, the shoe polish the men are putting on their heads, if that goes up, you can't just raise your price the same as that's going up. You're going to have to eat some of that. That's business. Let me take another call, then I'm coming to the Rubini statement. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from? 414?
Yes, this is Antonio in Milwaukee.
Give me your take, Antonio. You always coming with it. Talk into the phone, not the speaker, so they can get you.
Let me take the speaker off. Okay. And my take is, me being incarcerated, having an incarcerated past, and me actually being an entrepreneur, meaning I import products from Turkey, tissue, paper towels. I do 8 rolls of tissue for $5, 80 rolls of tissue for $45, 5 gallons of laundry for $30, 6 bottles of soap for $5. Is that as a people, we are so vocal about things that we are ignorant about, and we refuse to rely on people who have educated themselves about these circumstances. And I say that as a person who actually do business in the community, selling people products, when our biggest issue is tackling inflation, and I'm cheaper than Fortune 500 stores, that I send people to your page, to your videos, to watch your videos, to get them to understand when I say this is why we don't build businesses, this is why businesses don't grow. They can't comprehend it because they act as if America's wealth was built in one generation. And that's difficult to argue with these people who don't understand that you cannot separate business and politics.
You can't.
So they can't comprehend these things. They can't comprehend that Tesla became profit due to policy that allowed them to sell carbon exchange certificates. They can't comprehend these things, so they trying to compete against things that they can't even comprehend.
Look, Antonio, I'm not going. I don't want to keep you too long. I want to make sure I finish up the show. Let me ask you one last question. What do you think about the concepts that I was presenting earlier about black business relying on Chinese products because Chinese products don't have no labor rights and no environmental rights inside?
What we're doing is we're trying to benefit off the same oppression we complain about ourselves.
Come on.
So you can't see the whole thing is when the economy is going good, what they trying to do? They devalue the currency. This is all they want to be paid less. So this what you benefit off of. They're cheap labor, right? And what we have to understand is that's what America has always did. It benefits American people. The IMF in the World Bank, what they do when they go for they
Hey Tom, I'm gonna let you go because your phone is messing up a little bit. Plus, I want to get towards the end of the show because we're at the top of the hour and I want to hold everybody. You was real powerful. Look, U.S. and China agree to slash reciprocal tariffs in a major step toward easing trade war. Again, I just want to have the discussion, talk about what these small businesses are. In my view, many of these aren't businesses; they're just knick-knack middlemen. And if you think that's a business, you kind of grew up probably post-Reagan. That isn't a healthy business for a population, a society, nor a nation. In addition, I don't feel anything for you if you get sidetracked by taking part in the knick-knack. I understand why you might do it because that's what was set up. But silicone spoons for $9 that are 90 cents, I'm not with that. Now, maybe your price even lower than 90 cents because maybe you took the little custom mold over there and then you told them what to do. But I do know for a fact that what's going on is that these spoons are 90 cents because they shirk all the labor rights that we fought for in this country so that you can have a better life and your children can have a better life. You can't trade in your tomorrows for today and then be mad that today get worse. This is Tone Talks. Please go to tonetalks.net, subscribe, donate, and share. We having a discussion out here that nobody else is having. Let's talk about it.